Welcome back to This Day in Scottish History. I'm your host, Colin MacDonald. Today we journey back to March 26, 1296, when John the Red Comyn crossed the border with a Scottish host, aiming to seize one of England's most strategic strongholds, Carlisle Castle. It was a bold, desperate move in the turbulent opening acts of the Wars of Scottish Independence, and it would set off a chain of brutal reprisals that would shape the conflict for years to come. And if you're curious about other fascinating events that happened on this day in history, be sure to check out my blog at bagtownclans.com/thisday. The link will be in the description. By the spring of 1296, relations between Scotland and England had completely broken down. Only a few years earlier, Edward I of England had been asked to arbitrate the Scottish succession crisis, a role he twisted to his advantage by demanding overlordship of Scotland. John Balliol, the chosen king, was humiliated and controlled by Edward, prompting resentment among the Scottish nobility. Chief among the rebels was John Comyn, called the Red, not just for the fiery hue of his hair, but also for the fire that burned in his heart for Scotland's independence. In late March, Comyn decided to strike first. He led a Scottish army across the western border and set his sights on Carlisle. Perched on the River Eden near the western edge of the borderlands, Carlisle was a key English military hub and a symbol of English power in the north. Holding it would have given the Scots a valuable foothold and a much needed morale boost. But Carlisle Castle was no easy target. Its stone walls were thick, its garrison well stocked, and in a twist of historical irony, it was defended by none other than Robert de Brus, the elder father of the future King of Scots, Robert de Brus. The elder Bruce was a complex figure, more closely aligned with Edward than with his son's ambitions. His defence of Carlisle would add yet another layer of tension to the already tangled web of Scottish noble loyalties. The Scots launched their assault on March 26th, but they were woefully unprepared. They had no siege engines, no battering rams, and no real means of breaching the fortress walls. After a few days of ineffective attacks, Comyn realised that taking the castle by force was impossible. So he did what many armies of the time did when they couldn't capture a fortress. He turned his fury on the surrounding town. Carlisle's outskirts were set ablaze. Homes, markets, and churches were looted or destroyed. It was a message loud and clear. Scotland would not bend the knee, but the price of that message would be high. The raid failed in its military objective, but succeeded in enraging the English crown. When news of the attack reached Edward I, the Hammer of the Scots, he wasted no time in planning his revenge. Just a few days later, Edward unleashed a horrific counter-strike. On March 30th, 1296, the English sacked the Scottish town of Berwick-upon-Tweed with unspeakable brutality. Men, women, and children were cut down indiscriminately. The streets of Berwick ran red, and the death toll was estimated in the thousands. The attack on Carlisle had been a spark, but Berwick was the inferno that followed. The failure to take Carlisle marked the beginning of a grim chapter in the Wars of Scottish Independence. Though Comyn's raid did little to alter the strategic balance, it hardened Edward's resolve and signalled that Scotland's struggle would not be brief or bloodless. As for Comyn himself, his rivalry with Robert de Brus would culminate a decade later in another historic moment, his murder in the Greyfriars Church at Dumfries in 1306, paving the way for Bruce's rise. Carlisle Castle still stands today, a monument to centuries of border warfare. Its walls bore witness not only to siege and skirmish, but to the very heart of a nation's identity in turmoil. The events of March 26, 1296 remind us that the road to Scottish freedom was never straight, never certain, and often soaked in blood. Thank you for joining me today on this day in Scottish history. I hope you've enjoyed this tale of ambition, resistance, and retribution. Don't forget to check out my blog for more stories from Scotland's past at bagtownclans.com/thisday. Tune in tomorrow for another journey through time. I'm Colin MacDonald. Haste ye back.